This is The Blockchain Show. The Blockchain Show is a podcast that demystifies cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technology.
Troy, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. I am located in Toronto, Canada, which is quickly and quietly, sort of building itself out as being, one of the global blockchain hubs, where there's a lot of exciting blockchain development activity happening. As you probably know, Ethereum was actually founded here in Toronto, I believe 4 years ago. And I actually got my start in blockchain about a year ago, working with Anthony Diorio, one of the co-founders of Ethereum with Vitalik, which is pretty interesting.
Wow. So have you ever met Vitalik by any chance?
I know I haven't met Vitalik. When I got involved in working with Anthony, I started as the chief financial officer of Jaxx Wallet and Decentral. And at that point, Anthony had been working full time on the Jaxx wallet for a while and wasn't heavily involved in the Ethereum project. I have seen Vitalik around at various hackathons and public speaking events, but as you can imagine, Vitalik is a global citizen and traveling all around the world.
Yeah.
So I don't know how often he's in Toronto relative to being in Switzerland and Singapore. But really interesting fun fact is I do see Vitalik's dad quite often, who lives in Toronto. And well, I don't know if most people realize this, but Vitalik's father, Dmitry Buterin, is actually a very successful technology entrepreneur himself, and is now one of the founders of a company called BlockGeeks, which seeks to become almost like the Y Combinator or an accelerator of blockchain projects locally here in Toronto, which is pretty interesting.
I use Jaxx Wallet and I love it. Are you still working with them, or is that in the past?
Yeah, I haven't been directly involved with Jaxx Wallet since I left. As you can imagine, it's a bit of a challenge trying to manage different projects. But Jaxx Wallet is doing fantastic. They've leased, I believe, 4 full floors downtown Toronto here of office space to sort of build out Anthony Diorio's vision of what he has for Jaxx being almost like the central digital currency hub where users can manage their assets. And Anthony's a very, very creative-minded, very, very strong product sense. And so it's going to be interesting to see, what Jaxx does and what he builds out over there.
What is so attractive about Toronto that all this hub action is happening?
Yeah, what's interesting, I guess, Bitcoin was a global movement, and Anthony Diorio really should be credited mostly for starting off the Toronto sort of blockchain movement. He really got involved in Bitcoin very early and started organizing meetup events and groups and hosting events and made really big capital investments into sort of building a Toronto cryptocurrency community before anyone else really did. And so I don't know if you heard the story of how Ethereum was founded, but Anthony Diorio hosted the first Bitcoin meetup event in Toronto. 4 people showed up. One of them was Peter Todd. The other one was Vitalik Buterin. Some period of time later, Vitalik writes the Ethereum white paper. The first person he sends it to is Anthony Diorio. Anthony at the time had already been leasing office space full time to sort of host events and try and build various blockchain cryptocurrency projects and get them off the ground. And when he read Vitalik's white paper, he dropped everything and worked with Vitalik to get Ethereum up and running. And ever since then, it's just been more and more people in Toronto have been interested in cryptocurrencies and blockchain, and it's really grown into be a movement of its own. There's probably a blockchain event in Toronto about every 3 days, which is really interesting. And the conferences are getting larger and more built out, where we're basically seeing the creme de la creme of world-class speakers coming to these conferences and speaking. So like Vitalik Buterin's obviously being a native of Toronto. There's Chris Berniski. There's many executives in Digital Currency Group. Many sort of like prominent blockchain enthusiasts that you read about in the news are constantly coming to Toronto to present, provide conferences, and encourage the community here. And that's really resulted in a proliferation of blockchain and cryptocurrency companies that have sparked out of that movement.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was lucky enough to visit Toronto just over a month ago. I had a bit of a whirlwind work-related tour of Toronto and Seattle in the same week, which was interesting. And yeah, I definitely got the buzz that Toronto was and is one of the kind of global hubs of blockchain activity. Seattle is also another one. So there's another buzz going on there. I'm planning to come back to Toronto in the next few months again through work, and I'd really love to come and find a Toronto blockchain meetup of sorts and see what the scene is there. I've done a number of them in London. I've managed to get to one in Seattle, and yeah, I'm really interested in how Toronto gets blockchain, how Toronto works with blockchain. What was another interesting thing for me around Toronto, I think it was 2 or 3 months ago in London, there was a blockchain event, and the Toronto Global organization were in London kind of persuading people to invest or maybe even move to, certainly pitch their work at Toronto as a blockchain hub. And we're really getting the word out there amongst, organizations that are mainly based in Europe or in London, that Toronto is a place to come to ask your blockchain related questions and get your blockchain related work done. So there's a definite push from you guys in a wider sense that you're serious about blockchain. You get it. You're involved with many of the initiatives from the start or the early days, and there's it's not a bad place to look when you need that kind of work done.
Yeah, it really does help just from a career and trying to launch a company perspective if you're in one of these global blockchain hub cities. So what's cool about blockchain really is that you really can start a blockchain company anywhere in the world, and you won't be at like a material disadvantage, I would say, in terms of getting off the ground. Many people have made the comparison to Silicon Valley, where you almost couldn't start a successful technology company in the 90s unless you were in Silicon Valley, or you'd basically start somewhere and then you'd relocate to Silicon Valley because you needed access to that talent and capital pool of investors who understand the technology and can really accelerate those businesses. What's nice is we're seeing less of a movement in blockchain. I mean, there's many different blockchain companies that are all over the world. But coming from a blockchain city, it is nice to sort of have a hub where there's lots of companies and there's lots of community members and there's lots of investors, because you have like that ecosystem that you need to start new projects, right? And so like for me, it was helpful that when I started at Jaxx, I met a really great blockchain designer, for example, who really knew blockchain and was a really great designer. And so when I launched my company, it was very, very helpful to have access to that designer to help me build out sort of like whatever I needed to on the front end and product side to sort of make my vision come to life. Whereas if I didn't have access to that person, it would literally be sort of going on Google, trying to interview different designers, and all that sort of thing. It would just be a lot more of a challenge. But when you sort of can connect with people within an industry, it does help sort of get the ball rolling.
I'm really curious what kind of led you from those other projects into your own company, Neptune Dash.
Yeah. So Neptune Dash is the world's first publicly traded masternode company. So we raised 23.2 million Canadian dollars and went public in January of 2018 on the TSX Venture Exchange as a tier 1 issuer. And so what makes our company sort of so exciting is that we're helping to accelerate cryptocurrency and blockchain adoption through identifying this really unique blockchain architecture and building an entire business around it, right? What's particularly interesting about our company is that we're structured very similar to an ETF, because what you need to do to own a masternode is you need to basically have very low cost hardware and about 1,000 Dash digital currency tokens. And so the majority of the capital cost of operating and owning a masternode is basically the tokens. So when you say that you're a Dash masternode company, which we are, we're really saying is that we're a company that owns a lot of Dash on our balance sheet, and we operate hardware that's required to operate these masternodes. And so if you can imagine it from a business perspective, our balance sheet is basically 95% Dash digital currency, and we're earning more Dash digital currency each month based off leasing off server space to the Dash blockchain and getting paid in Dash digital currency tokens, very similar to the way that miners lease hashing power to the Bitcoin network in exchange for a portion of the block reward.
Could you walk us through how a masternode gets paid, like that process?
Absolutely. So the best comparison to understand this is comparing it to Bitcoin, because everyone basically seems to understand Bitcoin and how it works. So with Bitcoin, you have this idea that at the end of each block that's solved, there's various computers competing all around the world to solve a cryptographic algorithm at the end of the block. And the first computer that does that receives that Bitcoin payout. It's called the block reward. What Dash has done is they've realized that there's actually multiple stakeholders in a blockchain ecosystem. And in Bitcoin, only one of them gets paid, which is the miners. So if you think about just a basic architecture of a blockchain, there's nodes, which is hardware and servers that process transactions on the blockchain, and effectively is the blockchain as it is a full copy of the public ledger. And then you have miners, which are other hardware computers that do nothing more than secure the blockchain by taking the results of the public ledger that's hosted by the nodes, organize that information in blocks, and then cryptographically seal those results in place using very simple cryptography. And so that's another stakeholder. And then the other stakeholder is just the intangible sort of like general public community members who are hoping to build and contribute to the Dash blockchain. And that can be any number of users, right? So you have developers that are trying to build dApps potentially on a blockchain. You have community members that want to host events and raise awareness. You have potentially media outlets that want to basically write about a particular blockchain. And so what Dash has done is they've taken a look at Bitcoin's model where only miners are rewarded for the portion of block reward. And they've said it makes more sense to split up the block reward among all of the ecosystem participants. So what they've done is they've picked 45% of the block reward goes to miners. Another 45% goes to masternodes, which is our business. And then the remainder, which is 10%, actually goes back to the Dash treasury. And what that means is a certain portion of the block reward is earmarked to operate the Dash DAO, which is called a Digital Autonomous Organization, or a group of senior management that's been appointed by the masternode holders to structurally guide and build the Dash blockchain from an organizational and promotion, marketing, and scaling perspective.
So you see Dash as a solution to a lot of the problems that Bitcoin ran into. Was there anything else about the Dash blockchain that was attractive to you?
Well, we liked the fact that the primary issue is that the distribution of the block reward across all ecosystem participants is an interesting concept, and I think that more blockchains will be implementing something like that once these blockchains really begin to scale. It just makes intuitive sense. The more we looked at the Dash blockchain, we liked the management team. Ryan Taylor is the CEO of the Dash DAO. He's a former McKinsey consultant, very reputable, very smart guy, and very capable in terms of driving strategy of a global blockchain that's worth billions of dollars. And we liked the aspect of community fundraising. This idea that anyone can basically host a proposal and get paid by the Dash masternodes through the Dash treasury to build whatever needs to be built on the blockchain to develop. So it made sense that this sort of free market approach to managing the disbursements and block reward of the blockchain made a lot of sense to us.
A quick question from me, Troy. At this moment in time, kind of Q1 2018, cryptocurrencies in general are going through, let's call it a lull. That there is, I guess, the excitement of $10,000 plus, $20,000 plus Bitcoin value has ebbed away, and some of the focus around the cryptocurrencies is kind of ebbing away in our I guess our bearish times, perhaps, or pre-bullish times, whichever way you want to look at it. How's that affecting your business? How's that current time had an impact on what you're doing at Neptune?
Well, we have noticed that it's certainly, when the markets are hot and everybody's excited, being able to raise money from Canadian public markets is a lot easier. Right now, basically 10 public companies have gone public in the last 5 months, and almost all of them raised capital in December of 2017, which was the peak of the market. And that's actually when we raised capital as well. So it's a fantastic time to raise capital when the market is psychologically ready. There's many institutional and retail investors that are chasing returns and very, very excited for the space. And now that we've seen this dramatic pullback in cryptocurrency valuations, it's certainly, we've seen a decline in the amount of deals, in the amount of companies going public. And based on my conversation with a number of underwriters, it's certainly more challenging to raise capital from underwriters right now in the current market. Not saying that it's impossible, but just extremely more challenging relative to when it's a hot market. So, what I take from all of this is that it's really interesting to see that even sophisticated sort of public market investors, are still almost no different than uneducated retail investors, in the sense that, like, they'd rather buy the top than the bottom. And it just, more appropriately sort of psychologically reaffirms why you see these huge dips, because when the market's going up, people want to buy on their way up, and they hate buying on the way down or buying at the bottom, because they're scared of catching a falling knife. And so the decline in cryptocurrency prices have definitely affected our business, although we've only been in public for about 2 months now. But it's been a complete change in environment as a result of the price. That's for sure.
I'm curious about the public offerings, because normally we see a lot of emails about people talking about their ICOs, but you're talking about your IPO and also the digital autonomous organizations. Right. But I'm curious about the Dash DAO, and I'm wondering if you guys got any help from that.
Myself and my co-founder, Cale Moody, who's the CEO of the company, put the company together. We're very cognizant of the public market dynamics associated with hosting a masternode company that only owns Dash masternodes. And so we wanted to make sure that the Dash DAO would not be too offended. We didn't want to step on anyone's toes by doing this. And so we did reach out to the Dash DAO, and I did speak to some of their senior leadership team, and they were really, really great in saying that Dash is independent blockchain, and they want companies to adopt Dash and build on top of the Dash blockchain, but they very much remain independent in terms of they're not here to encourage or back any particular company, which is really important. So we did have some really great conversations with them, and they didn't technically give us their permission to do it, but they definitely haven't stood in our way as a result of this. I think that they know that the structure of owning a masternode can be quite lucrative financially when the prices are going up, and so if we didn't take this opportunity to put a company like this together, someone else would. And I do anticipate that there'll be many more cryptocurrency companies of various business models going to market. You raised a comment about the DAO, Digital Autonomous Organization. And I think, it's important to highlight that the DAO is, specifically the Dash DAO, is the world's first successfully, truly decentralized, multi-billion-dollar blockchain that's being governed by decentralized stakeholders who don't know each other in real time. And it's not really been fully appreciated by the media yet, like what that means. If you take this active voting stakeholder model and applied that to the modern day sort of common shares model, you'd have a very, very streamlined corporate governance model where shareholders could easily and instantly vote in real time what they're thinking and feeling and whether or not they're happy about the company. I think that's a very, very important tool and an underappreciated breakthrough, quite frankly, in corporate governance, that this experimental DAO model could, in theory, be applied to every company in the world, really, to ensure more transparency in modern day public markets. And what it does is it really, truly does seek to address the moral hazard issue associated with a board of directors and a senior management team and shareholders who own the company, but oftentimes those interests aren't aligned. And so that's one thing that I'm very, very excited about, is this idea of decentralized networks, decentralized voting, and masternodes play a pivotal role in that. And the Dash DAO has done an excellent job of demonstrating that it can be done at a multi-billion-dollar level.
Cool. I think you also said, Troy, you're really excited about the potential of organizations and businesses building out their needs, their functionality onto Dash as a kind of ecosystem. Certainly for myself in London, in the UK, I see a reasonably rich, I guess, Ethereum-centric ecosystem community of developers, ideas guys, businesses, investors, kind of getting or had got quite excited around Ethereum as a community, as a thing. How do you think that compares to the community, the ecosystem around Dash right now? Is it as rich? Is it in a different stage of development? Does it need to do more so it can kind of get to that similar level of maturity, or is it kind of there?
I think it's important to bring to light the difference between like currency blockchains and smart contract blockchains, right? So like it's almost like comparing Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like Bitcoin is very much a currency and a store of value. And Ethereum very much is a smart contracting platform, right? And so the comparison, when someone says, do you like Bitcoin or Ethereum? It's actually hard to make a comparison because they're both blockchains, but they're both fundamentally different, right? And so if I was to make a comparison, I'd more appropriately compare digital currency blockchains, which are meant to generally be a individual use case, which is a store of value transfer, right, or a value transfer. And smart contracts, which are a store of value transfer that's programmable, right? And the two can be a little bit fundamentally different. And so I would compare Dash to Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dash, Bitcoin Cash, and that's it when compared to sort of like the top 20 blockchains, because it really is just a designed to be digital cash or an everyday cash management, cash value transfer system. So the reason why Ethereum and a lot of these smart contracting platforms are so popular is that it allows developers to really build using the virtual machine concept, decentralized applications on top of it that's programmable. And so I think the communities are different, and it's hard. It's more challenging to get excited about Dash individually because right now they're not allowing for an ecosystem to be built on top of it. It's mostly to have a very, very simple use case. And I think that there's an argument to be made to keeping things simple and only having one sole mission, which is just to be a digital cash system on chain versus in Ethereum, which is very much more a whole developer ecosystem. So overall, Dash has done a really, really good job of promoting and beginning to build out its user ecosystem. And so if you monitor the Dash Treasury allocations that go out, there's many sort of targeted projects that individuals are raising money to try and solve the problem of Dash digital currency adoption globally. And so I believe there's 11 Dash conferences being held in South America, like specifically Venezuela, for example. But don't quote me on that number, but there's a number of conferences that are being held. There's a gentleman who's seeking to increase adoption of digital currencies in Zimbabwe. And so he's been funded and he's sort of like building out that ecosystem. There's another individual whose full-time job is to encourage Dash digital currency adoption through being a news outlet and reporting cryptocurrency news while also promoting the Dash blockchain and raising awareness. And so they're doing what they can and doing a really great job to build a grassroots movement where individuals get funded from the block reward to build out this community.
Well, that is fantastic. This conversation could go on a lot longer because I really appreciate your just like immense knowledge on this space, Troy. Tell us how our listeners can get to know more and potentially get involved.
Absolutely. So your audiences are free to contact me directly at troy@neptune-.com. Our website is neptune-.com if you want to see our website and what our plans are for the future. We are incubating a subsidiary company called Neptune Stake, which is aiming to be the world's first public blockchain validation company, where we basically identify proof of stake assets on the blockchain, stake them, validate transactions on the blockchain, and also provide investors with a yield as a result of providing that cryptocurrency transaction. And so, thank you so much for having me, and feel free to reach out to me anytime.
Great. Thank you, Troy. It's a real pleasure talking to you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Are you looking for an easy way to buy Bitcoin or Ether on a safe, secure platform? Coinbase is the easiest place to buy and sell digital currencies. Sign up today as a friend of the Blockchain Show, and if you buy or sell $100 of Bitcoin or more, you'll earn $10 of free Bitcoin for yourself and $10 of Bitcoin to support this show. Join now using the link in this episode's show notes at theblockchainshow.com. To learn more, visit theblockchainshow.com.